are the Home Secretary's plans ethical, and will they work to tackle illegal channel crossings? Joining me now is political commentator Emma Webb and former Labour MP and Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane. Dennis, what do you think of the plan?
Well, I don't know if you can see this, but here's a little picture we all saw yesterday, of Suella Braverman laughing herself sick, smirking and sniggering about the pain she will inflict, not on Africans. Rwandans are used to this, people coming in and sort of taking advantage of them, but people who fled from our wars in Iraq, Afghanistani women, girl footballers, all arriving here. And if she gets it through legally, and that's not clear, I was a UK delegate to the Council of Europe, they don't take these things lightly, we'll see. I expect maybe this year, Calvin, we'll see more journalists going with Ms Braverman to Rwanda than we'll see asylum seekers.
Well, I do have to make some corrections there, Dennis, because you showed a cropped photograph that is quite disingenuous, because the full photograph actually has a couple of people that Suella was joking around with and having a conversation with, and some dishonest left-wing reporters have just clipped the bit of Suella to make it look like she's having a chuckle.
Well, I've just reduced it there, Calvin. Come on, don't split hairs.
Emma, what do you think about this? Is it cost-effective, this policy, and will it work?
I mean, well, does any government ever do anything that's cost effective? I don't necessarily think that it's an ideal solution, but it is a solution. And I think that Suella Braverman, as well as this government, I think they are very serious about trying to tackle this issue. They obviously haven't been successful so far. And the government, well, the people of this country need to see results rather than just talk. I think the proof of the pudding is always in the eating in that respect. But Suella obviously is taking this very seriously. The fact that she is willing to consider potentially pulling out of the European Convention on Human Rights if they continue to try and thwart our efforts to secure our borders, I think that shows how serious she is about this. And when you talk about the ethical considerations, you also have to consider the ethical duty of the government towards the people of this country and the people who are living in here. And, you know, time and time again, the British people have shown at the polls and in opinion polls that they want this dealt with. This is a matter of security. And no, I'm sorry, this is not just people fleeing Afghanistan. These are Albanians, these are Vietnamese. They are people coming from a multitude of countries, and a safe country, ultimately, from France. So I think that they're absolutely right to be considering all options. Whether Rwanda will actually work, I don't know. It's certainly not an ideal solution, but it looks increasingly, I think, I'm convinced that this looks as if it is a reasonably decent solution. And I think that it's wrong to try and tar Suella as being some kind of demonic figure who is laughing in the face of those in need. I think she's really trying to handle this situation as humanely as possible. And I think that's what the Rwanda plan does.
That sounds fair. Dennis, is there any chance of this actually working? So we know that the Court of Appeal is hearing this next week. Could the illegal immigration bill even function?
I genuinely don't know. I do know from my experience as a Council of Europe delegate that oversees the European Convention of Human Rights. The only country that's pulled out of the European Convention of Human Rights recently is Russia. And the idea that Britain will line up with Putin outside it's nothing to do with the EU, 46 different European countries set up by Winston Churchill. Yep, it's hard. Every country in Europe's facing much greater immigration challenges than we are. And I don't think that's understood. We think we're the only country in the world where refugees, all economic migrants, I fully accept Emma's point, come far more in France, many, many more in Germany, in Spain, in Italy. Now, we have to solve this all together. If it works, the Israelis have tried it once. They shipped out a lot of African refugees from Israel to Rwanda. They're not put in prisons. They just went back home again and recrossed the borders into Israel. So the Danes have tried it. At some stage in Britain, we have to learn from experience. Emma's quite right. Government doesn't work very well. That is because it won't learn from anywhere else. We have the most arrogant government in the world.
Okay, not long left. I want to ask Emma about a quick question, because The Guardian have been complaining today that they and the BBC weren't invited on this trip. And in the Guardian article where they complained, it was full of typos, so I can probably see why, journalistic integrity. But is this an issue with free speech, or is the Trump approach to disregarding the journalists that are hostile and not challenging, is that an approach to take? What do you think?
Well, I think that the journalistic quality of The Guardian is always in question. I do think the government should take along critics for the ride. I think any journalist, whether independent or an agency, who wants to go out and report on this should be allowed to do so. So I don't really understand their reasoning as to why they wouldn't allow them to come along on that trip. But The Guardian are not exactly the most reliable source of information on this. They clearly have a very partisan agenda. But that said, many journalistic outlets do have a particular slant, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think, though, that they should be brought along for the ride.
All right, thank you very much. That was Dennis McShane, former Labour MP and Minister for Europe, and Emma Webb, political commentator. Now, 8 members of the US Congress have written to the American Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, warning him about state-sanctioned and legal harassment of Christians in the UK. It cited public spaces protection orders, or PSPOs, that are in place around several abortion facilities that prevent people from expressing pro-life beliefs and even from praying. And also the Public Order Bill, which would put buffer zones in place around all abortion centres in England and Wales. An example mentioned was a woman who was recently arrested for silently praying outside an abortion facility where a PSPO was in place. So are the Congress members right to warn about this, or are they wrong to call it harassment? Still with me is political commentator Emma Webb and former Labour MP and Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane. Dennis, I'll start with you. Does this sound like intolerance is becoming persecution of Christians at home, and should the US be concerned about it?
Well, I tended to address this to Emma first because this is a most profound assault on women. You've got these frightened, nervous, uncertain women, pregnant for whatever reason, looking for advice.
This is not a conversation about abortion, though. This is about religious
unfortunately,
freedoms.
but that is what the hard religious right in America want to do. Like Muslim Islamists, they're denying women just the right to go and have some advice. Now, the Commons debated this at great length with many Christian, many Conservatives. It wasn't particularly a Labour idea at all. It's a government idea to say, OK, get on your knees and pray for life, if that's what you want to do, fully accept that, but do it maybe about 100 metres. You can do that's all. Just respect women. We're a country that's becoming so disrespectful of women now. And frankly, Jeremy Corbyn and his friends used to write once a week and twice on Sundays, Calvin, to the United States, telling them what to do with their domestic laws. My message to all these mini Trumps in America is butt out. Go and watch your hero fade into the sun and stop trying to interfere in British political life.
OK. I would perhaps suggest that this isn't about protecting women, because it is women versus women. It's not us sitting here saying, oh, we have to protect women. It's women that are out there being arrested. The woman who I just mentioned was indeed a woman that was arrested for silently praying in her head because she cares about women. So it isn't a sexism issue, it is a religious freedoms issue. And I think in this country, if we're going to say it's illegal to pray in certain parts of the country...
They're saying that. They're just simply
no, we
saying...
are. The law has been passed.
The law's been passed
it's illegal to pray silently in your own head.
You can spend 24 hours, 365 days a year on your knees. Would you awfully mind just keeping, out of politeness, out of respect for women, 150
OK, so that's one example.
metres?
So the silent prayer thing is one example, but you're bringing it down to abortion. It's not about that, it's about prayer. We also have a teacher on later today who tweeted that homosexuality is invading the church. He has been sacked from his job. We've got street preachers who have been arrested for misgendering people, for calling gentlemen gentlemen instead of whatever pronoun they prefer to go by. We've got children being kicked out of school and called homophobic or transphobic for saying there are 2 genders because they are Christian, and that's what they believe. So it's about, is religious persecution increasing in the UK?
Well,
it's not about...
OK, I mean, fair points, but all the people I hear on the 2 genders tend to be many of my very old, very ardent feminist friends, who I expect most of them are atheists. This is a debate that's going on. It's a debate that's always gone on. We had our judges, when I was, before you were born perhaps, Calvin, sending 56,000 men to prison in the last century because they were gay. And I just think we should just respect everybody. Respect everybody. The men who were sent to prison weren't called martyrs by men of the cloth like yourself.
We should respect everyone, including Christians. Is that not right, Emma?
Of course we should. And I think that we have a prevailing culture now that is just fundamentally anti-Christian. All you have to do is look at the slew of stories that just keep coming out one after another. We've just seen this story of this theologian, this lecturer who's been fired himself by the Methodist Church. I think actually not only the Methodist Church, but the Church of England itself even has a sort of anti-Christian agenda. I mean, Calvin, you yourself have experienced this, that any Christians who are expressing what would be regarded as orthodox doctrinal beliefs find themselves in hot water pretty quickly. So I think that actually the culture, the secular culture of the country has actually seeped into the church somewhat, and we see that in the attitude towards more conservative Christians. So you just have to look at the I've got a long list of cases in front of me. People can go themselves to look at the Christian Legal Centre or ADF or Open Doors, all charities that work on the persecution of Christians worldwide and also here in the UK. And I think that the fact that US congressmen and women would feel that they need to raise this with the ambassador just goes to show that this is an issue that is making us look bad internationally as well.
Absolutely.
I think the British government need to start taking this very seriously, because it's fundamentally unacceptable, not only because we're a country with a Christian history.
Although we should still be a Christian country too. But thank you very much. That's